Good morning, everyone. This is my watch list for Friday, August 14th. All right, so what happened yesterday? SPY finally broke the range, right? 775. We got the nice breakout, could have longed that entry. It was right off the open, but still, you could have longed over 775, and we ripped to 779 before failing back down and then holding into the afternoon. All right, and today we are basically opening where we closed, up 0.08%. Okay. So the question moving forward is, does SPY hold this previous all-time high? 776.80. All right, that's going to be the level that needs to hold for bulls. If it doesn't, then we'll go back to 775, right? And then if 775 doesn't hold, then we can see that continuation selling, back into, what was my level? 772, and then lower than that, right? So 776.80, very basic. That's what needs to hold for bulls. And then 775. Those are the two levels that bulls need to hold for SPY to continue seeing upside. Now, any upside, I'm still going to say this, any upside is short term, okay? I strongly believe that we will see selling into the end of August or September, okay? QQQ also broke the range, right? 725 I mentioned was the big supply, and then we also broke the 728, which was that high from last Wednesday. I said you guys can long as long as we break that 728, and you guys see QQQ made a nice move. Now today, I think we could actually take a very safe bounce on QQQ at 728. This looks very textbook, okay? If the Qs get back to 728, we could take a bounce off of that level, all right? I'll be watching that today. Apple, still one of the weakest names, okay? It's right back into that 305, 306 supply. For me, though, at this point, I kind of want to see it just lose 300, okay? Maybe we get an entry below yesterday's lows at 302. See if we get an early entry on weakness. But at this point, I really want this to just lose 300, which I think it will do. It's one of the weakest names out there. AMD in that range, again, still. It's either got to break 500 or lose 460. That's it. All right, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Amazon, we might be able to get a bounce on this today. This 258 level, it's still kind of far away, but if we get that 258, that's a big hourly and daily structure you guys see here, okay? So Amazon, obviously uptrend since earnings, but if we get back to that 258, that's going to be the first bounce spot that I'm watching. Meta still held that demand, that 580. 580 is big. This is within a range though now. 580, 600, 610. I don't like anything on Meta today. Microsoft rejected the 500. We talked about the 500 breakdown. Yesterday, rejected 500. If we can reclaim 500, it turns into a long. But as long as we're below 500, I'd be careful longing Microsoft. Netflix made a massive move after Pershing Square. Bill Ackman said that he's back in after exiting for a loss in 2022. He said he's back in, okay? So this made a massive move. This is one of my top watches yesterday. I mentioned this in the pre-market. I said as long as Netflix holds 75, this is going to rip. And it didn't quite get to my bounce level. It went down to, 75.45. I was watching the 75 bounce, right? So it bounced a little bit early, but this thing just ripped, right? It ripped. It's gapping up a little bit again today. What can you watch on Netflix? Bounces at this previous high, 76.80. Look for bounces on Netflix there today. PLTR, I actually like this chart a lot, right? Either we get this dip and rip. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. It's just too strong, okay? So let's watch 180. 180 was the high from last Monday. Or actually, that's this Monday. Yeah, 180 was the high from Monday, and 180 was the high reject yesterday into the after hours, end of day, okay? But if we get that 180, we should get another nice push. I don't really have much above 180. Maybe next level is 188, 190, okay? So let's see if that happens today on Palantir. Nvidia caught a beautiful short on this yesterday. Brett caught the long, okay? So let me just show you guys. Brett longed, I believe it was here. Brett longed here, and it went to 226.50. So he caught a nice $1.50 move. And then I went short here at this 1040 candle. Beautiful. It sold from 226.50 all the way down to 223.50. It's like a $3 move on that short, okay? So I mentioned this before on Nvidia, and then I mentioned it on Microsoft. I can tell, right? I watch the tape. I watch the price action. I can tell when names are getting exhausted, right? And as long as they don't start squeezing, then it's likely they're going to sell, and that's exactly what happened on Nvidia yesterday. I could tell tape was exhausted, even as SPY was ripping, Nvidia was not, and that's when I got short and Nvidia sold. Okay, so today, you know, if it reclaims 227, yesterday's highs, then it can continue squeezing. All right, but if we get back below 225, especially 222, this thing's gonna sell quite a bit. Okay, so I want to watch this today. Do we hold 225 or not? Do we sell back below 225? We can likely re-enter this for a short. I'll let you guys know. Tesla, this is interesting. Okay, so Tesla had a very weak day, the 12th, right? It looked like we were going to start selling back lower. And then yesterday, we completely reclaimed, and now we're actually breaking above my supply. So this was the big supply. Remember I said 337 to 340 was my supply? Well, now we're just completely ignoring that supply, and we're actually entering the gap fill. So after earnings, we had a gap fill level. Let's draw it right now. 342. Right? 342 is our gap fill. We have a gap all the way back to 370. All right, so we'll draw the level here. 342 to 370 is a $30 gap that Tesla can fill. And based off of yesterday's close, this completely strong momentum is very possible. Now let's watch the open today, okay? But if we reclaim 342 and we're holding 342, this turns from a supply short to now a supply reclaim, and this turns into a long, okay? So I'm gonna be watching Netflix today. Either we get a crazy like pop and then failure back below 342 and this turns into a sell, or we get strength off the open and we can long any dip because now we're in the gap fill, all right? So let's see what happens on on Tesla today. It's going to be interesting, all right? There's a lot of interesting setups today. It's Friday. We've killed it this week, so let's keep it chill, and I'll see you guys on live.